say besides that. Number one, he's very lucky because he married well. He definitely married well. His wife Robin is just unbelievable. And Howard's with us here at the History Center, and we're so lucky and so glad that we can do this today, because in January we did not know whether he was going to be with us ever, because he had heart surgery and he was like touch and go for a couple of months, so we're lucky he's here.
Yes.
So now I'll read my prepared statement. Howard Jones' family came to Texas in 1827 with Stephen F. Austin. He grew up on a working ranch in Texas. His presentation today is on the war horse. Okay, Howard.
Thank everybody for being here. Thank the History Center for allowing me to be here. And another person I got to thank the Lord.
That's right. Amen to that.
Let me tell you about my background a little bit, because that has a lot to do with what I collect, the way I view different things. But I was brought up on a ranch around Lakey, Texas. Somebody may know where Lakey, Texas is. It was a working ranch. Working ranches mean that horses are not pets. They're not pleasure. Working horses mean just that. They're for working, for your livelihood. I don't dislike horses, but I tell you, as we go on here, you're going to learn I have great respect for some horses. And I think some of our stories will tell us about this. When we go to a lot of talks, I get to see people start with a little story. I don't know if that's to make you like me more or what it's all about, but I've got my story here. And I'm going to tell you a quick story, and I promise you that the story will have a point toward this whole presentation. Okay, I'm not completely wasting your time. Back in the 70s, lived in El Paso, was training horses, race horses at Southern Park, New Mexico. And this veterinarian and I owned a stable. And I had a phone call one day, and a guy says, I've got some zebras. You want to buy some zebras? What you ought to be thinking right now is, what are zebras doing in El Paso, Texas? That's what I would be thinking. But this was a very interesting gentleman. His name was J.J. Arms, spelled Armus, and he was a famous detective. And when he was young, he had been playing with dynamite caps and blew both his hands off, so he had 2 prostheses. And he was such a famous detective that y'all remember the old Hawaii 5-0 back then?
Yeah.
He was a featured person on the Hawaii 5-0, which made he was very interesting. I went to his home. It was a big old home. It was all around. It were these fences, big iron fences, and it had it divided into different sections with exotic animals. So I went in there, and I ended up coming home with 2 zebras. Well, not knowing a lot about zebras, but in my whole life I've been kind of where I would, if I could buy it and I could ride it, I could sell it for 100% profit. So anyway, we got that thing home, and about the second day or so, we tied him up, and I threw a saddle on him. You don't know what's going to happen, because I never rode a zebra, and I've never known anybody that's rode a zebra. So I said, turn him loose. And he took 2 jumps, stopped, and I look, and he's looking me in the face. Unlike a horse, he could turn his face toward me. And he proceeds to chew my saddle off, chewing my legs, chewing my shafts. And I did the cowboy thing. I got off. Well, 2 days later, thinking I made a kind of a bad investment, I tried it again. And a couple more days went by, and I tried it again, and I said, that's enough, and I had him out there in the pasture. And some old boy come by with a nice big hat on and a nice pickup, and he says, is that your zebra? And I said, yeah. And he said, I want to break that zebra, and I'm going to ride in praise. We're going to ride in praise. And I tell you, I thought about it for about 5 seconds, and that man owned that zebra. I've grown up breaking horses all my life. Anywhere from Mustangs to thoroughbreds. I've also been a licensed trainer at the racetracks in 2 different states, U.S. and Mexico. I've been with Mexico. I've been a racing official for the country of Mexico, and I retired as a director of racing on one of the major racetracks. In addition to that, I was a farrier for about 15 years. That was long enough, my back had it. But about 15 years, so I was a farrier, which deals with iron horseshoes, and a plater, which deals with aluminum horseshoes. So that's what I've been doing in my life, and that has a lot to do with the way I look at things up here. So let's get started. And when it comes to these horses and these animals, the point of that whole story in the zebra is that this was truly a wild animal. Wild animal, never been touched by humans trying to develop, trying to cultivate it. The animal was fighting for his life. Completely different than getting on another horse. But we have wild animals, then we have animals that are domesticated but have been turned back in to run wild again. And what are they called? Somebody knows.
Feral.
Feral.
Oh, feral.
Feral horses. The horses, when the people came to the West and they saw all of these horses that were running, they were not wild horses, they were feral horses. The last wild horse that was in the Western Hemisphere was 10,000 years before the Spaniards ever got here. 10,000 years. So these were all horses that had been domesticated by people. And then we go to what is your domesticated horses. And how do we get domesticated animals? Is by selective breeding. And I thought it was always a matter of taking the male and breeding a particular female, and this is how you did it. But that's not the only way it was done, because the Indians, for example, developed great horses, and they didn't have time to selective breed. What they do is they take the animals, put them in the most harshest conditions that they're ever going to imagine, and if you live, that is your stock that you breed to. The rest of them died. So you do this long enough, you're going to develop superior animals to fit their needs. Okay, if you're going to have selective breeding of a horse, okay, some of the things I may want. I may want size, large or small, and that's kind of shown right here. I'm going to pass these shoes around. This is a Clydesdale.
Wow.
This was in the 1100s by these folks right here, the Celtics. Now the Celtics had horses that were small for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years, but they just used them for packing, is what they were using. Later on, and as they went on, did they get horses from other groups. But this is the horse they have. You see them right here. You'll see their shoes right here. This is the Clydesdale.
Wow.
You can pass these around, and then a Celtic horseshoe. Now, over here you have a scale. Okay. Yeah, there's a little different right there, isn't it? Okay. These are hands, measured in hands. In almost all the English-speaking countries, we measure horses by hand. And a hand is 4 inches. And they're measured from the wither of the horse. It's where the neck meets the back. About right here is a wither. Okay, that's where you're taking your measurement from. On the small scale, you've seen Mongolian horses, the Mongols. Probably some of the best horsemen there ever was. This is how big their horses were. Most of them about 12 hands and weighed 600 pounds. This is their size. Now we go on up the scale and you'll see different size hands. You'll see a Clydesdale at 18 hands, and this is at its withers.
What's it, 20?
At the very top, this is a Belgian horse that is alive today, 20 hands, 2 3/4 inches. Can you imagine? That's a horse, isn't it?
Yeah.
You know, it's tremendous. He is in the United States also. All these other horses, and we'll be talking about it, are going to fall in between. You might have the cavalry horse. Another reason you might want a real small horse is you were working mining coal, and they had horses pull those carts in there. We have a horse or a mule, you better be short or he's not going to work. Right. There's a reason. A lot of times your horses that you use for pack animals are quite small also used. Okay, if you have this horse and you've developed And it takes thousands of years to develop the horses that we have today. Thousands, not hundreds, thousands of years to develop them down there. Then we're going to need some equipment to get the most out of them and have that horse fill the need that you have for him. One of the first things that was invented, by the way, we've had war horses for 5,000 years. That's a long time. One of the first things they wanted to invent is a bit. And you've seen the Egyptian chariots. The bits, and I've seen them, only photos of them, the bits were like this. They were made of bronze, not metal. They were made of bronze. But we dug up skeletons of horses from 3,000 to 3,500 BC that had marks in their teeth from these bits. So we know they had some kind of bit at that time. Now, there's a lot of different kind of bits. This is a snaffle bit, breaks in the middle, and you can see right here with these here that they were using. This is, I figure, is 1100, in the 1100s, and I'll tell you why in just a minute. But it breaks in the middle. Back like this is the snaffle I used on Mustangs and zebras. This is my rarest. I have a big collection of bits. This is the rarest bit I have. Why somebody would make that bit, I don't know. You figure it out. I don't know. It's got a rope.
What's in the middle? What's the rope?
Yeah, I don't know. That's got to be the rarest. I can't imagine what they were thinking when they did that. This is a curved bit. This is from the 1800s, from the Army. It's quite a bit, isn't it? That one right there. And this snaffle bit, I'll go ahead and share it with you. Why did I use this bit? This bit made in the 1800s. I broke so many Mustangs with this, I can't imagine. I liked it because it didn't pull through their mouths. See this here? It kept pulling through their mouths.
Oh, yeah.
Also, made your mouth tender, the rolled wire. And because of that, they were more responsive. The deal was, as I was saying, I'd buy a raw Mustang. If I could get him ridden for 30 days, then I'd double my money. Now, I was young. I was in my 20s when I was doing this. A long time ago. Okay, the other thing you want, you got a snaffle. Let's go do a saddle. This is not an antique, but it's a saddle built, well, maybe it's 50 years old. I don't call it an antique, but you're calling it an antique. Flat saddle, you've probably never seen one before, but it has no tree. Saddles have trees in it. You've seen Western saddles and English saddles. It's flat. It's right against the animal. We put a blanket under it. You've got stirrups in these things. Maybe a little bit been moved in 50 years. Let's see. Hold it down. Okay. Now, this is a jockey saddle, by the way.
Oh, yeah.
You know. How does a jockey turn and control a 1,200-pound running horse? Well, here's what he does. He uses his feet, and he can use this to be like this and then pull on the reins. You follow me? This is his feet against there, and he can pull on these reins, or he can pull on that horse. Without something like that, he's just riding bareback. It won't work. Look at that. That one's only 50 years old. But that's basically how those saddles were. They were just a flat saddle with stirrups. One of the greatest inventions ever made was when they put a stirrup on one of these things.
I need that for my bicycle.
Now, you're going to drive animals, you're going to have carts, wagons, and you need to drive them. The first Egyptians, when they had their chariots, they had wooden stakes went out, and it went like an oxen cart, and that didn't work on horses at all. So you have the, like I said, for the oxen, then you have a strap. They later on went to a strap, which was right in front. You've seen that when they're driving carriages and such. Okay. Then you have your horse collar, which is the most effective. And let me tell you why the oxen and the rest and this one, because if you went up to that animal and said, what are you pulling? Are you pulling this cart? He says, we're going to tell you, I'm not pulling it, I'm pushing it. Follow me? He's pushing it. So you can push this much better than you can a breast strap or the old oxen. And that's why this became popular. You can see the old snaffle bit that went with this. Now, I want to talk about shoes. Shoes, they've been trying, that's one of the problems with horses, is they have very tender feet. And people have been trying to do something about it for, I'm sure, thousands of years. They were wrapping rawhide around them, vegetable material around them, but this all fell off. It didn't last very long. So the Romans came up with a shoe that they buckled around the hoof. They called it a hippo sandal, is what it was called. But the same thing, you can't really run around when you've got like a sandal on. So somebody decided they would take some metal and nail it to the hooves of a horse. And I thought, where did they get that idea of nailing a metal shoe to a horse's hoof? Well, I read a lot of books. And I read a book on taking care of camels. Everybody reads books like that, right? Yeah. But it says in there, when your camel has a hurt foot, what you do is you wait till he doesn't expect anything, you lay him down, and you take 3 men, and you nonchalantly walk around. I see 3 guys in turbans, nonchalantly walking around this camel, and somebody says, jump, and they all jump on him. This camel is big. I imagine that, I'd like to see that. You know? But they hold the camel down, and they took a piece of wool and literally sewed it to the bottom of the camel's foot. His foot was so thick with leather, they could sew that on there. And I imagine this is what gave these people the idea. Now, if you can do something through the bottom of a camel's foot, let's try to do it on a horse. And I'm sure there was a lot of mistakes till they got this done. But what you're going to see here is the first. I'm going to pass these around. Listen, all these artifacts I've already been professionally treated. You don't have to have gloves to put these on. But these are the first example of Roman horseshoes around 900s.
Wow.
And you can see they're working toward a real shoe like we have today. But that's what those are from the 900s. Touch these things now, because in museums they're not going to let you play with these things. I guarantee you. So we go from the Romans, and you know the Romans, I always heard they go down these cobbled streets. You ever walk down a cobblestone street? Man, I mean, that's hard to do. I figure they must have put sand on them or something, because it's a good thing they invented some shoes, because that alone would make your horse lame. Plus, you were so limited to where you could fight your battles, whether it be on chariots, whether it be on horses, where you had to stay on land that did not hurt these horses' feet. And so that's what's going to allow them to do, right there, those shoes. Then we go to medieval period. And I want to show you some medieval horseshoes. These are the real thing, professionally coated. And she's going to pass them around here in a minute. You can see still they're not making horseshoes like we see them today. They eventually are going to. These are all medieval. And feet on farrier, when I put nails in shoes, when I buy the nails and they're flat on one side. And I thought, boy, are we smart. We learned to make flat nails, and when I put them on that horse's hoof, flat on one side, they tend to come out this way. Well, by gosh, I got a medieval horseshoe with a nail in it. It's the same thing. Those guys did it a long time before us. They figured that out.
That's what you want.
And as medieval times went on, you went to them carrying all the big armor, and they're heavy. And then as time goes by, they're going to go to horses that are smaller. They're going to go to horses actually about 15 and a half hands. opposed to say 16 and bigger. And then they're starting to make a shoe like this. This is still a medieval time. You can tell that the horses are getting smaller. This is definitely beginning for these are the spurs from knights in medieval times. The real thing. I don't have any reproductions, folks. Everything's real. But I have treated them all where you can't touch them. Amazing, huh?
What period?
From 1100s, 1200s. One reason why I can tell you this is probably those shoes are not in the 900s, they're in the 1100s. And I'll tell you why. Iron was very hard to come by. When they wore a shoe out, they get it and feed it into another shoe. It was very hard. It was precious metal at that time. Well, at this time, you'll see they're starting to shoe oxen. So it's probably in the 1100s because iron is becoming more available that they could afford to do oxen. You also, like I said, there's a snaffle bits from these people, and actually 2 tools that they can use for farrier work. And I look down here on the bottom, and it looks like these are very, very early. Because it looked like they were trying to build a shoe and perhaps put a piece of leather on the bottom as a pad. That's all I can guess. Nobody can tell you for sure, but that's what these look like. That they heated rivets and stuff in them. I think that's what they were doing. They were making like a hippo sandal because they hadn't invented a shoe yet. You know, you get these things, and I get them from overseas, and they still got dirt all over them. So you don't get the best information as far as what they were used for, just what the site was. One thing here, anybody have any ancestry that are Vikings? Anybody? Vikings? Well, I know this is very similar to very early shoes. From maybe somebody. Keeping rust, does that mean anything to anybody? The area?
Renaissance.
No? No, this is a Viking horseshoe. Okay. They didn't always go in ships, they rode horses also. Covering the colonial period of the United States, when we fought our battles, we mainly used infantry to fight the battles. There were horses, but not a lot of horses. But they were using horses for pulling cannons, pulling supplies, and such. But when you check, most of the shoes being made of iron are rusted and gone. There's hardly any shoes left from the colonial period. I was very fortunate. I got a hold of somebody. They had found a pair of shoes in a barn from the colonial period. And this is one of them. And you can tell, must be cold up there because that's caulk for digging into the ice and snow. And you can see the big old square holes that they did to put that on that animal's foot. And I've only had 2, and they're very rare. I don't think I'm only buying if got any more shoes from the colonial period.
How big would the horse be for that one?
I don't know if it was that big. I'd say, well, you know, I think it's a mule. Number one, the way the hoof is made, I'd say 15 hands. Probably about 15 hands. Not real big, but just looking at the hoof, a lot of times mules have more of a hoof that looks like that than a horse does. But we're just guessing, but you can imagine poor old Washington pulling those cannons and that ice and snow up there. And that's where that came from. Pretty rough, cold conditions. Yeah, that's what I mean. You're grabbing in the ice and snow. And because that was in a barn for 200 years, it was in that condition. One of my favorite things to talk about is horses with the Spaniards and the Indians. I'll tell you about the Spaniards. When they brought their horses over from Spain, they were actually good quality horses. You'd be surprised. They brought with them Port Arab, and the other one is Bards. They were like from Africa. They brought some really good horses over here, and it made it very easy for them to knew the Aztecs and the Incas because they never seen horses. And I'm sure it just made it very easy to take over down there. And then we got horses that came up with the Spaniards up into North America, and you know, they came to Santa Fe. We all know that. And then the Spaniards got run out of Santa Fe. Well, the way the churches are, when they go in to make Christians out of all the Indians, that they take them and they put them to work. And you can bet part of the work that they did was taking care of horses. And over those years they were there, those Indians learned what to do with horses. And that's why after the Spaniards left and the horses went back, and hundreds of thousands of them, quickly the Indians learned to take care of horses and ride them. They had learned that from, I'm sure, the Spaniards, because you can't learn that fast. It's taken everybody else hundreds and hundreds of years to learn to do this. So we have the Comanche, Cherokee, incredible horsemen, and the Spaniards. And what the Spaniards and the Indians have in common is those people were very cruel to horses. Very cruel, unbelievable. I'm not saying they didn't have a #1 war horse that was taken care of and groomed, but the majority of them were ridden and severely treated to get the job done. I mean, think about this. This is the spur from the Spaniard. This is a rowel. How kind are you when you're jabbing the horse with that?
Oh, wow.
You know. This is a Spanish ring bit. This is a very severe bit that goes in the horse's mouth that you could bring him to pull back and bring that horse to his knees with something like this. You know, by the way, that it was a Mustang, a small horse, because this is the size of a mouthpiece of a standard horse, probably a 15-hand horse. But look how small the mouthpiece is on the Spanish ring bit. Very small. They, one of the problems with the backs of their animals, they did not have saddles and such. They would tie blankets, they would just do anything to ride these horses. And I've heard comments and stuff that, you know, that it was just part of the way it is, that part of parts that he was hurting, this is just the way it was in life. And so they just used them until they were used up. I've often heard a story of Indians that the reason you couldn't catch an Indian if he was trying to take off, he'd get on a horse and he'd lead too. He would run until his horse was exhausted. He'd kill him, gut him, take organ meat out, eat it, and go on with the next one. And then he'd do the same thing with the next one. But that's how the Indians saw this. This was, once again, it was a tool. He had no love. The Indians, how powerful or how strong it was, how many horses you had. And so they looked at it completely different. And like I said, the Spaniards were really tough also. Here's a part I'd like to talk about, is pre-Republic of Texas. And the horses that we've had here in fighting battles. And we know a little bit about that, and my wife and I do reenactments. And we get to see, I'm on the infantry by the way, but I see the guys who are in the cavalry, and you see them shooting, we're shooting. What you can see, there's so much smoke you can't see a lot, you know. But one thing about it, controlling a horse with a cannon going off, believe me, it's scary being an infantryman because the ground shakes and smokes, you got cannons going off. The last, we do Goliad, the reenactments of Goliad. The last one we were up there, they separated the cavalry to a completely different battle, because horses go crazy and run over spectators. Not good for business. You know, but that actually happens, because some of them are trained well enough, but man, it does not. Some horses are never going to be trained well enough to do it. It takes special kind of animals with nerves, so they eliminated that. But it's quite exciting being involved when it's not like Hollywood. You got your cavalry charging, guns misfire, horses go crazy. And if it rains, it's all off. Battle's off. We all go home. You know, that's really the way it is. But the cavalry, well, because of that, I've got a very special artifact for you. Here you have the first photo ever taken of the Alamo in 1839. I acquired this. I met a man that had gone up there to Briscoe. Apparently, you help me, people. University of Texas, Briscoe has a section up there.
Yeah.
Okay, they got this picture, and it's reversed, the negative. He took a picture of the negative, came back, and turned it around and made this picture, and he allowed me to take that picture of it right here. Now, when you face the Alamo Chapel, on the right was a palisade. And in that palisade, Davy Crockett's men were, and they were 4-pound cannons. On the left were the long barracks. Here it is. Okay. In 1860, Sergeant Edward Brothel of the Alamo Guards went in the long barracks, and he found a 4-pound cannonball. Right here. This is from the Alamo. And I've got all the papers and everything to prove it. That's something else you're probably never going to handle because those are all locked up too.
Even it was one that was defending the Alamo and it never got fired.
But this one here, correct. It was in the long barracks. And I know that Crockett had 4-pounders. But I know they had one of these in a hotel in San Antonio. It got stolen several years ago, and they put a big reward, but it never showed up again. So that actually, for sure, we bought it out of an auction in New York. And where it had been all this time, this gentleman here, they put it in a museum in Brownsville, Texas. And the Brownsville, Texas museum closed, and they put it on the auction in New York. And that's how we did it. That's my pride and joy. Okay, going to the Civil War. I've got some notes right here. There's just so much to share about the Civil War. And the horses were the backbone of the Civil War. We know that. 1.5 million horses and mules are going to die in the Civil War. 1.5 million. In the beginning of the war, more horses and mules died than people died. I guess bigger target. I don't know what the deal is there, but see, Battle of Gettysburg alone. Many people have been to Gettysburg. Okay, you have 1,500 horses died in that one battle. Incredible, huh? In the early part of the war, the Confederate horses were much better than the Union horses, and the reason was us Confederate guys were doing horse racing down south. So we had a lot of good running horses down here, and they weren't doing that up north.
Probably one of them got behind the horse.
Yeah. Well, also, if you're in the Confederacy, you had to furnish your own horse. The Union furnished theirs. They had to furnish your own. Let's see, the size of the horses where the Union was about 15 to 16 hands. In the Union, they had a horse boot camp, I love this, that they trained the horses, and they had them lay down when they were shooting live rounds over the top of these horses, and it says that if you jumped up and you were killed, you were promptly relieved of duty.
Say that again?
I mean, come on. Let's see. One of the tactics in the war was if you had horses and such pulling cannons, the best thing to do was shoot the horses, eliminate the cannon on either side. That took care of that. More horses and mules died from disease in that war than they had killed in combat. There was a condition called glanders. I've heard about it. It's like a pneumonia it went through. So more of them were dying from that. And when a horse became fatigued that was used in battle, you know what they did with it? They killed them. That's another thing too. They just killed them. I think that's why they went through so many. Just a note that single horses on a flat ground could pull 3,000 pounds. Wow. You know, but if you had kind of a hard ground, it was 1,900 pounds. It was a rugged ground, it was 1,100 pounds, and they could pull this from 30, 32 miles in one day. This story I've been telling for years about you can't use mules in a battle. And because mules just will not do what horses will do. And then I came across where they first decided that, and it was called the Port Republic Battle in June 1862. And a famous Stonewall Jackson was running the thing, and our Confederates were there, and they were bringing in a bunch of mules, and they had howitzers on them, and they were loaded with the weapons, I mean the ammo on the howitzers. And they said, take them behind that ravine and you're going to be safe. So they took all the mules, all the equipment behind the ravine. Well, about then, the Union cuts loose and they're shooting over the top of the ravine. Mules went crazy. I mean, they were laying down trying to scrape off the packs on their backs and the ammo, and tore everything up. Took 3 men to try to hold one mule. And that's when they finally realized that you take horses into combat, but not mules. Mules are too smart. Survival, you know. You can haul them if there's no battle going on. Boy, that battle strikes up, you can just forget that mule isn't going to be there. Ours is a mule. See, else on the Civil War, I don't know if there's any people here that, I don't know if we can pass these around, but is anybody Civil War buffs in here? Anybody hear about Civil War? This is from Manassas. Manassas. You know, this is what was called First Bull Run, right? First Bull Run down Manassas. That the people went out in buggies and took their lunch, and they were going to watch the battle take place. Unbelievable. That's Manassas. The other one I have is Vicksburg. Probably a lot of y'all have been to Vicksburg. Yeah, this is from Vicksburg, yeah. And this is what surprised me. This is from West Virginia battlefield. Oxen shoes. Why are you doing these slow-moving oxen? But they did. They were using oxen to pull, I don't know if cannons or supplies or what. But yes, they did use oxen during the Civil War. One thing I'm going to pass around from the Civil War is if you were fighting that battle and you're charging the cavalry charges and you've got a single shot, you better have some backup.
Yeah.
Well, this is one of the backups. This is a 11 millimeter Belgium, and it's double barrel. And I can imagine, you know, you shoot that single shot, you got a sword, you got every pistol you can pull out. And I'll pass that around. It's Belgium, and I'll tell you why. When the Civil War broke out, we didn't have enough weapons, north or south. So they bought thousands of these Belgium double barrels. Union bought most, South bought some. But that one has survived. I've got another one similar to that that was a battlefield pickup at Gettysburg. So a lot of these men had backups. Because like I said, a lot of them were single shot rifles. And I can imagine the cavalry watch, I guess they all had swords, but when after you fired that first shot and you ran out of bullets, man, I'm sure it got be pretty difficult.
Hey, Howard, were these percussion caps or what?
Yeah, okay, this is called a pinfire.
Pinfire.
Pinfire. Pinfire, it could be, they made the cartridge like they are today, but they had not figured out how to make the primer on the end of it. They had a little pin that stuck up. And so this would hit the top of that pin and it would go off. Now the advantage of this, it doesn't make any difference if it's raining. And I was serious about that. I mean, we have reenactments up there. We're all using flintlocks and stuff. And if it rains, we all go home. And it was really like this. Regardless of the weather, you could get your shots off with this right there. Big improvement, you know. Okay. Something that come out of the Civil War is that we started making weapons for the cavalry. And this is a picture. It's fantastic in that it's provenance is that everybody in the army here is using this particular rifle. Okay, it's a Remington rolling block rifle. Probably a lot of y'all are familiar with that. If you want to, y'all mind if I pass it around? It won't shoot.
I'd love to see.
Okay, it won't shoot, I guarantee you. But you have to take a picture. You have to take a picture. That's pretty dangerous looking guys, right? The sombreros. But I can see the Mexican Army in Pancho Villa. You know, you saw all those bullets across like that? Well, this is a single shot, but you could hold one of those and immediately load it. So that was a great improvement. It's a rolling block Harley. Take your time with that. We're going to World War I. What a horrible war. Well, we had the front where we had all the trenches, and of course, horses are not any good for that. But at the eastern front, I guess they didn't have trenches, and so they were using a lot of horses over there, not just for supply, but for fighting with them. I've got some pictures of the horses in World War I.
How did those women
Sad.
lift these
It's
things?
sad. 2 million horses died in World War I. 2 million horses. That's unbelievable. We thought the volume, it's incredible when you look at it that way. This is one that the shoe was made to go into the ice. Okay, this was used the Russian-German front, 1914, 1919, Lithuania. It says on the eastern front, British cavalry was indispensable against the Ottomans. The cavalry was taught to fight on the horse, but also get off and fight. Both fronts served with pack animals, and the towns, the countries around there, the largest thing amount that was shipped in by train was fodder, hay. That was the most shipped was hay for all those 2 million horses. It's unbelievable. A couple of real good pictures of World War II. Trying to make some face. Look at this, folks. The Nazis fired off the back of their heads. Isn't that something? We've got also a picture of them in Saipan using a buffalo to try to get their stuff up. Saipan. Says several units used horses, Polish cavalry. German and Nazis used cavalry. British used horses against the Japanese in Burma. Okay. Germany, because I guess we bombed where all the trucks and all the transportation. Germany, this is the Nazis used 2,750,000 horses for packing their supplies because we wiped out all of the around. Let me pass this around. This picture is just the one in Saipan. Now I guess we come to my favorite part of the whole presentation. These are the ones you're going to pass out. This is from Korea, folks. I was stationed with the 1st Marines at Camp Pendleton. And when I was at Camp Pendleton, Sergeant Reckless was there with me.
Can we take a copy of this?
It is copies for everybody. I want you to have a copy of this because I think people need to share this with other people, your grandchildren, people are interested. Like I said, she was stationed with me 4 years over at Camp Pendleton, retired, of course. She was in Korea. I'm one of the persons that cared enough that I actually went to Virginia and had my picture taken with her monument there. This is a, what's that?
She got a Purple Heart.
Yes, she got 2 Purple Hearts. Well, read on there. There's this little filly mare is not even 14 hands tall. Okay, this is just one part of it here. Now she was trained. They put all this equipment on her to haul up. After 2 or 3 trips, she'd make the trip up there, and she'd then come back on her own and go back again without anybody leading her. I know it's unbelievable. It says in March 1953, during a fight, she made 51 trips to supply the front line in one day, wounded twice in combat. She went to battle for promotion, and the war ended. 2 Purple Hearts. Why they haven't made a movie about this horse, I do not know. It's incredible. I make them look at my head up.
What breed was she?
What's that?
What breed was this horse?
She was crossbred. They bought her in over there in Korea from some guy. You know, he wanted to sell the horse because he wanted to buy, I think, a prosthesis for his sister's wedding. And she's about a 3-4-year-old mare. Crossbred. Like I said, she's barely 14 hands. You get this book on Amazon. It's worth reading. Buy it real cheap on Amazon. To me, that's just an unbelievable true story that she would go make these trips by herself in combat. You know, most horses are scared to death of cannons going off. And here she's doing that. She's carrying wounded out and taking supplies in. Unbelievable. Yeah, the reason I put this together is because when I talk to children, we give them that information. We tell them all, like kids want to hear stories about horses. Oh, yeah. And when they leave, I let them pat their horseshoe for good luck. You know, and give them something to go home and tell their families about. And so this is where I may not be in love with horses and never have a horse as a pet. I admire this horse like you can't believe it. Okay, not a lot to go here, but I do have our men in blue, when they're on the streets riding their horses, they put boron on the tips of their shoes. It keeps them from slipping and keeps the shoe from wearing out. What do they put? They grip that boron.
It's what attaches there.
I go to Dr. Mobley over here. You might know who Dr. Mobley is, but he was in the service as a doctor, and he gave me this information, and I looked it up. The U.S. Army Special Forces used horses in the battles of Afghanistan, and in 2001, they let the tribesmen, the last charge on Kabul was done on horses and mules. This is just kind of fun to pass that around. Anybody got any questions? We covered it all. You know, there's always going to be a need for horses in different environments, in jungles and deserts. So I think they'll be here forever when we do the military capacities.
Just about breeds, where's a Percheron fall in that 18, 19 hands?
Percherons are actually quite large.
That's what I thought. My great-grandpa had them.
Actually, the Clydesdales were not the biggest of draft horses, but they bred them to be 18 hands. I would say probably they're certainly as big, 18, 19 hands. I can't imagine a horse. I can't imagine feeding a horse, you know, like that. Oh, one little thought is that, let's see, when the Union cavalry went out, the rations for a horse in one day was 14 pounds of hay and 12 pounds of grain per horse per day. So when you turn in a Hollywood movie and you see all the cavalry going out there and they don't have any supplies, and this is Hollywood, The supply wagon at Gettysburg from the Union coming in to fight at Gettysburg, the supply wagon alone was 5 miles long. So that's the supply. They don't realize it takes a lot to feed the men, and it takes a lot to keep those horses going. And if you don't keep the horses going, then you have nothing. You remember, you know Texas history, the grass war? That anybody Texas history books? Well, in the San Antonio, General Cost was in there. We had him bottled up. This was December 1835, and he had nothing to feed his horses. His horses were dying. So he sent some men out just to try to gather up fodder to get back to San Antonio and feed his horses, and the Texans caught him, and that was it. You know, but that's how important it was that you've got to feed these horses. A lot of horses, I'm sure, have just been killed because they just get weak and tired and they can't feed them. Okay, let's have a little drawing. How we're doing here. This is a couple of little, let me tell you what it is, because you may not even want it.
Is it hay? I could use hay.
One of them is a lucky horseshoe from a horse running at Southern Park. And I'll tell you why it's lucky. You can train over 100 horses to get one racehorse that can pay his way to a racetrack. Wow. That was a lucky horse, I'll tell you that. But what it's really about is, I'm a big fan of racing, and there was a horse that I considered the greatest horse that ever lived. And in '73, the horse won the Triple Crown, first time in 25 years. The horse is named Secretary. Well, I happen to have a personal photo that I've made 2 copies of.
Wow.
This is Secretary to the Colt.
Oh, wow.
I don't think you'll ever see this anywhere else. Secretary to the Colt, and really, so that's one of them. That and your old shoe.
How did you get that?
You have your drawing.
Oh, that's going to be
Somebody draw that.
I have hairs from Citation's tail that my dad gave me when we went to Calumet Farm and I was in like 9th grade. He leaned over on the board fence. We saw the horse in the paddock. He was about 20-something years old, and he found it. Well, it was in his mane. I saved him. He's coming after He was so old then.
Okay,
He
the
got the
first
Triple
one
Crown
was
in
22.
1948.
Elaine Alvin.
He's in the restroom.
Draw again. Number 3.
Jerry
Jerry Brundrick. Rigged.
Yeah, you know what you want.
Thank you all for coming. I really do.
That was great.
Anybody would like to have their picture taken with this? Anybody that's interested in guns, they're welcome to come up here and get their picture.
I'd like that picture. Here, I'm gonna show it.
You know he died.
How long does the horseshoe normally last on a horse? Well, today horseshoes have steel in them, so they last a long time. As a horseshoer, I can pick up horseshoes. Here's, for example, I can go to a battlefield over here where you had Santa Ana fighting the Texans. And I can find a horseshoe on there, and I can tell you if that horseshoe was from a Santa Ana's blacksmith or it was from a Texas blacksmith. Because we know the difference. We know horseshoes. But the horseshoes now are steel, they last a long time. I go and pick up horseshoes at different areas around the Gulf here. They're not even in the water. And they're rusted to the point they just like powder. Just because of our environment here. That answers your question. These horseshoes here, man, I mean, they're rare. To get a shoe like that from the Middle Ages, very few of them. That's why these have been professionally treated in a museum. Professionally treated. Y'all can come up here and hold these things and look at anything you want to. I can answer any questions. That's why they're all treated. I like sharing with people. Sharing just, then you'll remember it.
She doesn't know. She scanned
With it.